Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. I hope you're having a fantastic day and had a wonderful weekend. I know I certainly did. Got to spend some time with my son, and all is well in my world. Future reference, my dog was rehomed. My brother is watching him now, so it's a best case scenario for a worst case situation. So if you were kind of curious about that, that is the positive update there. Another positive update is we got a lot of new subscribers. We hit almost 50 on the first video, 30 on the second. So a lot of folks are coming over, starting to believe in the current situation that is basically just logical, unemotional trading. It's simple as that, folks. So be sure to like the videos, comment below, help grow the channel. Thank you again so much for always doing that. I've got at least 1,000 people that do that day in and day out, and it's really awesome. So really appreciate you. We're going to focus on order blocks today, key levels to kind of pay attention to, touch on the macro perspective, but more so focusing on the lower time frame for this week ahead. And then obviously discuss the CME gaps here that formed for Solana and Bitcoin, and then the liquidation levels that I think are super, super important here. This is half the reason why we're successfully trading ourselves, based on the simple fact that we are looking at the disparity between these coins that we analyze, right? In other words, which coins are doing well, which ones are not, and how do they couple or move conversely with Bitcoin, right? Are they moving with or against it? Those are all things that kind of lead us to nice profitable trades. We took 67% off ETH, XRP 49%, and then another 31% off SUI. Sorry, that's Solana, not SUI. SUI was one that I am not quite sure about trading just yet. We'll take a closer look at that and much more. Be sure to stick around. Let's take a look. All right, folks, before we jump into the back end juicy liquidation data, I always like to start off with some polls and kind of see what your thoughts are, because there's usually a disparity between crypto YouTube and crypto Twitter. So let's quickly double check here. Bitcoin fake out, yes or no? Crypto Twitter, or sorry, this is crypto YouTube rather. 60% of you feel like we are without a doubt pulling back and this is a fake out. I kind of agree with the fact that it's a short-term pump and we're more likely and need to basically just wait a little bit more to be patient to see if this is actually going to happen. But for the most part, we did break our descending trend, our short-term descending trend line. That's a positive sign. We can see here as well from crypto Twitter, roughly the same percentage here. Majority of you also feel like this is without a doubt, a fake out. As you can see also too, we saw a lot of unusual buying activity here. And yesterday too, just to kind of clarify, when I say get ready for a reversal, that essentially means the price is likely going to reverse direction, which we saw that break of that descending trend. So happy about that. Obviously, that worked out well for our trades, but the whole concept remains the same, right? We're unbiasedly looking at these trades. We're looking at the overall perspective, understanding and respecting the fact that we are still in a descending trend from a macro perspective, but the short-term descending trend line has broken, okay? So that short-term shift in momentum has occurred. We're now traveling into that resistance range of 115 to 117K, and we're looking to be pretty good shape to see that happen, and I'll explain why I feel that way. And once more, that's the wrong word to use, the wrong word choice. I don't feel that way because I'm emotional and I'm like, oh, I want Bitcoin to go higher. I feel that way because we look at the charts day in and day out. We understand these short-term reversals coupled with liquidation events and significant amount of momentum shift with liquidation delta. Those things help me understand or feel confident in taking a trade in either direction, right? So for right now, we're tentatively going up, and I'll explain more so about that. Looking at shorts, basically these are ask orders here effectively. People trying to sell Bitcoin. We can see 114,300 is the heaviest area, plus or minus a couple hundred. So that low 114K range, we're seeing a lot of selling pressure there. You could say the same thing for 113.7, but it's a little bit less in volume. So it just generally implies we have more people trying to sell than buy right now. Now that doesn't imply that the price is going to go down. It just tells us that this is a resistance range and we need to respect that. All that being said, the weekly time frame, this is what this is here. We can see that we did close at roughly 112,000, just above our 20-day SMA. So overall, the super trend here is still looking good. We have yet to close below that 109K range, which is a previous high, effectively working as a new low. All right. So these are all good things from a macro perspective. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not like everything is truly bullish here. But for the most part, we're remaining pretty strong on the macro perspective. So I just wanted to touch on that for you. To also need to touch on this too, so you understand kind of where we're at. We got CME gaps for Bitcoin between 110 and 111,300. Now, CME gaps are not guaranteed, but the probability of them being filled at some point or another is high. Now, in my experience, the previous CME gaps, they're lasting 1 to 3 weeks. Okay, so while I feel like we're going up right now and we may pull back, I don't think we're going to see that immediately. I think that 111 to 113K range is a solid amount of support now that we've broken through it, because that's our previous area of open interest. So just know that is kind of where we're at here for Bitcoin. There is potential or propensity for us to retest that local low of 110,000 approximately. CME gap as well for Solana, partially filled with this wick down here, but you can see approximately 203 to 210 or 203 to 207 is that range. We could very well see that area retested. So that's kind of where we're at there for those two coins. And then we look at liquidation from a macro perspective here. We can go ahead and take a look and recognize that there's more liquidation close by to the upside than the downside. Okay, and that just implies that more likelihood of further upside is higher. Okay, 115,000 we can see right there, 115 almost even, is that local area of resistance. There's areas of confluence there too, with, if I recall correctly, some fib levels or moving averages on the larger time frames, just kind of letting us know that 115 is that tentative resistance wall for us. So we see 115. I think a short-term correction from there makes perfect sense. We look at the daily time frame. We can recognize as well 114.3. This is where we saw those pretty large order blocks here. We can see that range right there, heavily coveted. So our short-term resistance is 114.3, where our larger time frame is approximately 115. So we're traveling into a resistance range. We got to expect the price to slow down. That's kind of where we're at. Now, when it comes to a disparity in liquidation, oftentimes this is a really good tool to identify continuation patterns or reversals. When we look at the amount of liquidation here, we can see that's almost like that's more than a 10-to-1 ratio for Ethereum for shorts getting wrecked versus longs. Okay, so anybody shorting over the weekend got destroyed. Pretty much anybody watching any other YouTube channel probably got hammered pretty hard. 180, we can see what, that's like almost a 14-to-1 ratio, right? For Bitcoin, for shorts to longs. So we can see that Bitcoin is liquidating more shorts than Ethereum, albeit that's still a very, very high amount. But if you compare that and you look at Solana, that's a 3-to-1 ratio, and XRP is just like a 1.2% ratio. There's not a significant amount of altcoins doing well except for Ethereum. Okay, and what that tells us, usually Ethereum is one of the first coins to start to run before altcoins start to follow. So my speculation is we're going to see some altcoins start to move here pretty soon. Where's Solana in this mix? See here, yeah, 3-to-1 XRP. I don't see SUI, but the key takeaway here is that we are seeing a significant disparity between the altcoins that we're going to be reviewing today. Ethereum specifically taking or absorbing some of that market cap, moving up towards that $4,200 range. All right. Now, when we take a look here, of course, at the amount of fear and greed and the altcoin season index, we kind of combine those two. Heavy fear is good, and altcoin season index being where it's at right now is also positive. It's increasing since we looked at this yesterday. So we're still above that $1.5 trillion crypto market cap for altcoins, and that's an extremely good sign, letting us know that altcoins are holding in really well, or they're recovering quite nicely based on the simple fact that Bitcoin's pulling back. And, obviously Bitcoin pumped today, but the key takeaway is Bitcoin pulled back recently, and majority of altcoins, while they did pull back, they were at like a 1-to-1 ratio. Once more with liquidation, there was no significant disparity of altcoins, at least in the top 100, where we saw like a significant flush of liquidity. Okay, so what the bumper sticker version here of all that is just that altcoins are still in very good shape. We're in a fearish market. You generally want to try to buy that, which is why we were buying over the weekend. And at this point here, the question is, do we want to sell or not? So we're going to try to identify that now. All right. So you want to be cautiously optimistic in situations like this. Never just get foolhardy and stuck on stupid, as I like to say, because a lot of times you can kind of see these little pumps and be like, "Oh, I'm so happy that we're good." This could very well be another trap. Traps are set all the time by market makers. You also got to recognize too, and I failed to mention this earlier, I discussed this late last week. We have a potential government shutdown here in the US on Wednesday, the 1st of October. And I think sometime later today, we're going to see some volatility because Trump is having some kind of meeting regarding that sometime today. Okay. Now, I'm not up to date on all the fundamentals, but that is essentially the bumper sticker version of what we need to recognize here. So that implies volatility is coming, right? So all that being said, there's a ton of liquidation just above the price here between 114 and 115.5. This is more macro liquidation that has been there ever since September 22nd. So it's basically a week ago when all these shorts were in profit at 115,000, they're now at risk of getting liquidated because they didn't secure profits. That is so stupid and so crazy. Anyways, all the more reason to secure profits when you can, folks. Don't be a greedy trader. Anyways, we can see top traders, their margin is low, but there's a lot more shorts versus longs. So they're shorting the top right now, essentially. But when the margin goes down, that implies confidence is low. So I don't think that they feel that this is going to be a good fit. In other words, they're taking shorts just to take a short based on overextension, but with the low amount of margin being used per trade, leads me to believe that there's not a lot of confidence that this level will hold and that the price could still continue to progress higher. We look here, we can see the average whale trader is starting to increase their volume. This does imply confidence in the price action bottoming out. So overall, generally speaking, when you do see whale traders, these are positions from 100,000 to 1 million plus. These are all positions that are letting us know that the bottom may actually be in because whales are starting to become more active. Those are good signs. Ultimately, for further upside, that's good. All right. So all that being said, when we look at open interest, we've talked about this previously. 111, 113 is those key levels. Okay. So they do work as magnets, but also oftentimes work as support or resistance. So the easy way to understand is we got support below the price now between 111 and 113. So it would be logical to see a potential retest of that range and to consider buying or taking a long into that. The reason why that's logical is because we have liquidation long delta now at 8 billion in the green, implying that the bulls are now in control. Now, what that basically tells us is that the price can still turn around, but the propensity for that to happen is lower because there's more buying pressure at this current range, right? So we're going to need to see more than $8 billion in selling pressure to get that to turn around. And that's going to be a difficult ask, right? And we take a look at that and we combine that with the liquidation above the price, 115 and 116 respectively, potentially even 117 are the three areas of interest for the whales. All right, market makers see, okay, we got a lot of shorts up there. We're going to go ahead and hammer them. This is the last 7 days worth of liquidation, keep in mind. If we zoom out a little bit further, it'll tell us a different story, but probably pretty similar in the sense that we have a lot of liquidation above the price, specifically at 120. So short holders between 118 and 120 are potentially at risk. I think it's a low probability just yet. Between now and then, we want to recognize that there's a lot of resistance above us, but that all kind of influences the price to go higher. So me personally, being kind of a conservative, safer trader, I usually like to wait for a bullish back test. So I'm going to be looking for maybe a 113 entry as a potential reality because we got some volume there from previous time frames. Or if the price, maybe average in between 113, 112, and 111. All right, so those are kind of just thoughts there, mainly because the back end looks strong, not because I feel emotionally attached to this coin. Right? And I like to emphasize that and reiterate that because there's a lot of emotional traders that trade and they're probably going to be upset and thumbs down the video and leave because I just struck a chord, but that's just the way that trading is. Unfortunately, it's not it's never the funnest if you are on the losing side of things, and most emotional traders lose. All right, so taking a look here at the daily time frame. When we look at this, we want to understand 117 close approximate is that heaviest area of resistance based on liquidation. Sorry, this is the amount of control here based on volume. So volume is oftentimes a support or resistance in a lot of ways. So we're entering that resistance range, right? So 115.3 to 117.5 is that approximate range, that $2,000 range of volume resistance above us. We have yet to close above that level in over a month, right? So August 20th, we tested that level. Boom, rejection. And then back here again at September 20th, instant rejection there, or it took a few days to pull back. So hypothetically, we can presume that'll be a new resistance, right? Or sorry, the established resistance is there. The current resistance too, if we look here, and I'm not gonna try to clarify, or sorry, let me clarify, not trying to mislead you here. There's two moving averages, therefore reinforcing kind of the resistance in this range, right? They're both kind of hanging out that 114K range. So we could very well see the price pull back from here. But generally speaking, I always like to look at moving averages as trend lines. They are oftentimes running consistent with trend lines. You'll see that with the other altcoins we're looking at here today, where the 20-day SMA kind of is that starting point. The 50 is roughly that longer term trend. And those are things you want to kind of look at. Overall though, daily time frame in summary is looking quite bullish here. We're seeing the shift in momentum. We're back up over 50 in the RSI for the moment. Keep in mind the candlestick hasn't closed yet today. We probably need to close at 113 or higher today to keep that. But being above 50 in the RSI is generally a sign of transition. Same thing as well here with stochastic swinging up. for the second time, mind you, carries more weight for the second time, and the money flow index pivoting off that 20 range. That in combination with MACD soon to converge and this oscillator essentially losing momentum, those are all extremely positive signs. Now, are they confirming signs that we go long and go hard? No. They're just early signs of reversal letting us know that we are back on track or mostly getting there, okay? And the reason why I feel like we're short-term back on track is because we've broken this short-term descending trend line quite obviously, right? So we broke through this lower high pattern and we have established a new higher high, right? So we got a previous high, new high right there. So while it doesn't mean the price can't still pull back, it just increases the odds of it continuing higher at some point. That's what it does. Because once more, the bears back here got swept, and now they're a little cautious about shorting because we surpassed that level and they got hit pretty hard. And once again, we saw a 14-to-1 ratio in liquidation for shorts versus long on Bitcoin. That's an indicative sign that the bulls are back in control, at least for the time being. Now, the thing we got to pay attention to is this resistance here at about 116,000. It's our 0.786 fib level, but also that descending trend, okay? So if we continue to progress a bit higher, I think the 116K range will be our local top. And we may actually be already topping out here because we're overextended, but the concept remains the same here. We're still in a pretty good situation. We've broken above 70 RSI. Usually when you see that, you don't want to consider shorting or taking profit on your long position until the price breaks back below there. So the easy way to understand it here is if we continue higher, leave it open. If you start to pull back, consider securing profits and then maybe average in on the 113 to 111 range. That's kind of my rough estimate of thoughts of where we're at. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Comment below. Love to hear it. It's always dynamic, always different, but the key here I think is to not be emotional and to ensure that you're always using logic. And what we see here is pretty obvious. There's a short-term continuation higher. We want to presume it's going to continue. Okay, that's the concept. All right, so let's go and take a look here at the next series of altcoins. Quick heads up to my traders, make sure you take full advantage of this offer here from Bitunix. There's a significant deposit reward bonus as well as a $16,000 individual reward for just trading on the exchange. If you use my link to register in the past, you're automatically eligible. If you use my link to register now, you're eligible for all future trading bonuses and competitions. Check out the links down below for more information. All right, folks, let's go and take a quick look here at Ethereum first and kind of double check. And just to clarify too, because I got the question a lot, like, why did you take the trade that you took? Well, it was a key level support level at 4,000. We've already identified that. That's this guy right here. And then furthermore, the price consolidated in a descending type of trend where Bitcoin was 2x the downside and majority liquidation was swept here for Ethereum. So we saw this imbalance in liquidation as well as the liquidation delta was shifting. So, if you're not familiar, I suggested and talked about all of this in my trade alerts. So if you see every single coin we took profit with, XRP, Solana, Ethereum, there are explanations as to why we take the trades that we do. So please make sure that you access this. I mean, some people just kind of act like it's not even there, and it's ridiculous to me because the whole point of me mentioning that is to help educate you on why I take the trades that I take. I don't just blindly shoot and close my eyes and throw darts. This is very systematic, right? And a lot of it is based on liquidation, the things we talk about in these videos. So obviously, continue to learn as much as you can, but I had to throw that out there because some folks are just, kind of curious, like what goes into the trades that I take. It's all there for you. Just make sure you take advantage. Anyways, we've talked about this previously. 4,300, 4,400 is that next key level resistance. We don't got to go into too much detail there, but the concept remains the same. We have 10 billion in liquidation long delta, basically implying that further continuation higher makes a lot more sense. We can also see with the liquidation levels, there's a big chunk of liquidation between now and 4,400. So the propensity for further upside right now is extremely high, right? And once again, this is just the back-end data kind of letting us know that we have reasons for the price to go higher. That 10-to-1 ratio for liquidation versus, majority of other altcoins is kind of stalling out leads me to also believe that Ethereum is more likely to continue higher too. But we do want to recognize here, not get too foolhardy and, too ahead of ourselves because there's a lot of volume above the price at 4,200. So key takeaway here is every $100 for Ethereum is a key level resistance or support. That's the best way to describe it because we can see there was a significant consolidative effort here at 4,100, right? 4,000, 4,200, 4,300. Like literally there's little stepping stones here. So The propensity for further upside is higher, mainly because of that, but we also have local resistance. So please recognize that that is kind of the case. So if Bitcoin does end up pulling back, we will see Ethereum pull back too. And it may actually retest that local high of 4,100. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute with smaller timeframes, but for now on the daily time frame, we can recognize we have a lot of resistance once again above us at 4,300. That is our macro point of control. So ever since Ethereum's been in the 4,000 plus range, excuse me, we've seen the most amount of consolidation or buying pressure at 4,300. So 4,300 is that resistance. Ensure you secure profits between now and then. All that said, daily time frame is breaking bullish, but isn't quite there yet. We can see a MACD convergence on the horizon, stochastic swing, 30 and 20 on the MFI, bouncing right there in that perfect little range. So the daily time frame is looking pretty solid for a continuation higher, but we cannot fool ourselves that we're just back on track here because we have our local bottom at about 4270. That's also a consideration for resistance based on the simple fact that we spent a lot of time there before we broke down below it. Now we probably need to expect the price to reject out there and potentially even pull back from there, right? We want to presume the worst and hope for the best. That's kind of the case. So daily time frame breaking bullish, not quite there yet. 4-hour time frame is above two of the important moving averages here with one left above us, right? And once more, moving averages are more like trends. They're not resistances or supports, okay? So the key takeaway here is that our short-term trend is reversing. We've confirmed that we're in good shape there. We're over 50 on the RSI. We're not fully blown above 70 on the RSI like Bitcoin. And we can also see stochastic swinging up for the second time with MACD still converging, increasing in which we're seeing more momentum here, right? So the propensity for further upside is higher here because of that. But we are reaching an overextended state. We're at an 8 right now on TD sequential. So to me, it seems very logical that we're going to see a slight retest of the local high of 4,100 before the price pivots and bounces. So a strong chance we see a little continuation like this here. It may even be a sharper retracement to 4,000 back up again. It all depends on how Bitcoin performs here, but we got to pay close attention to the liquidation and how that is responding to Bitcoin. Right now, Ethereum and Bitcoin are leading the pack. Most other altcoins are not sure what to do. So that's mostly a positive sign here for Ethereum, but once more, expecting a short-term correction would probably be the safest play here. Now let's take a look here next at Solana. Oh, just before we do too, I got a lot of questions on this announcement that I made yesterday. Yes, there's an October sale available for you through my Discord. I'll roll out with this all on the 1st of October, but generally the concept here is that I'm providing permanent access as an option I've never offered before, as well as 3, 6, and 1 year membership. So those are all available for you there at discount for the month of October. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention so you know. That's crypto pay only. My website is basically credit or debit or PayPal. So just recognize that is only for those who want to pay crypto. All right, so all that said, Solana backend, what are we looking at? Well, simple way to understand it, 210 to 220, those key levels, right? Those are the resistances. We can see 210 held like a champ with our open interest resistance range. When we look at liquidation long versus short delta, we're at about 1 billion in the green. Okay. Now this coin can fluctuate between 3 to 5 billion at any given time. So still very early on the pump. The likelihood of continuation higher is greater now because of that. Not just because we have more people taking longs, but because a lot of shorts are due to get hit here soon. We've got 218, 222 as the two heaviest concentrations here locally of liquidation to the upside. So it does, this increases the odds of seeing 220 sooner than it's pulling back, right? Sooner than the $200 range. We can also recognize too, unlike other coins, we have a lot more volume below the price than above. And this, granted, this is local, this is a smaller time frame, but the general consensus here is we got a good foundation of volume at the $205 to $200 mark, and that's a very positive sign for sustainability and this continuation / reversal. Another thing that's different with this coin than other coins is that we have a macro descending trend line here that's been relatively broken. And I say relatively broken because trend lines are literally just lines on the chart, but we have established that this lower high, lower low pattern is tentatively breaking, and obviously we haven't fully continued to make higher highs and higher lows in the daily time frame. It'll take a while for that to happen. We can recognize that we are in pretty good shape here to see the price action basically breaking above that short-term descending trend. And once more, that's mostly just a week and a half worth of a downtrend. The reason why that's beneficial, though, is because we can see we're starting to lose momentum on our oscillators, and we can also recognize too that stochastic swinging up and MACD and money flow index are actually above the price, specifically the MFI, and that's a very, very good sign. So These are all things I like to look for when I take trades. Generally speaking, you want to have a positive macro structure whenever possible. And this is definitely looking like one. I'll update our playout chart and I'll post that. In fact, I do actually have an updated playout chart available on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord, but I will make sure to reflect that here with our larger time frame macro analysis there. When we look at the 4 hour though, the important thing here to understand is that we are in a good position right now. We're kind of squeezing within those moving averages. And that's usually a good sign that implies continuation higher. Oftentimes when you break above 50 as well and you have higher money flow index, those are important signs. Those are like buy signals in a lot of ways, kind of just letting us know that continuation higher is more sensible here. So this coin, as well as Ethereum, are both looking pretty strong right now. The only thing I'm slightly concerned with is the amount of liquidation that we saw was low, but there's still a lot left. So that just basically implies there's more meat left on the bone, and we didn't hit that big pocket of liquidation yet, where Ethereum had that pretty significant chunk between 41 and 4,200. So that's a good sign there, ultimately giving us more propensity for further upside. Now, if the price were to pull back, just to kind of clarify, it's really, really common for local highs to be retested as new lows. In fact, we've already seen this happen. Take a look here. If you look at the previous high here, that was, what was it, this 205 mark. 205 couldn't surpass, couldn't pass, and now eventually came back down to bullishly backtest that with a lot of volume. So that basically implies that we're more likely to go higher than lower because that's that buying pressure at that lower price point. So once more, always pay attention and try to look for a bullish backtest of the previous high, retest as a new low. All right, let's go and take a look here at SUI. Let's see if this one's worth trading at this point, because I've gotten a lot of false positives on this coin lately, and it's generally been underperforming versus majority of the other coins we've been trading, right? So while XRP, Solana, and Ethereum have been profitable, SUI kind of is somewhat stuck on stupid right now. And that's just kind of a term I use to describe something you shouldn't be trading, mainly because there's too many false positives, right? And we look here, 340 and 360 are the heaviest concentrations now, but roughly every 10 cents we're seeing resistance for this coin. We can also see as well, with all this extra price action, all this extra, pump from Bitcoin, we're literally at break even on liquidation delta. That implies we have more people, or roughly the same amount of people, shorting as we are taking longs. Now, that's not something you really want to take a long into, right? Because you can tell that we're at a resistance and we're having difficulty breaking through that range. So when we look here on the left-hand side, we can see there's a ton of liquidation above the price, but we haven't broken bullish yet. So while there's more propensity for the price to go a little bit higher, possibly 340, 350, it's still a higher risk to consider a long position on a coin like this right now. So daily time frame, we zoom out, there is a good macro structure here. So just so you know, there's a pretty significant bullish type of pennant pattern here. So I still feel like we're probably going to go a bit higher here and likely push towards that 360 plus range. But it is inherently riskier to take a trade right now into that key level resistance, which is that 340 mark. That's essentially that massive amount of volume that we've seen here for SUI. So most people are averaging the heaviest at 340. And then secondary to that is roughly 390 with this local range here. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at there. Overall, haven't broken through the 50 on the RSI, and generally speaking, the daily time frame looks like the same structure as most coins right now. So, shifting momentum, breaking bullish, but not even close to having broken that just yet. We are seeing an overextension here, of course, as well. So there is potential to see a bullish backtest of our local high before the price action continues higher. So we may see low 320s. So hypothetically, from a lower time frame here, even though the back-end liquidation data doesn't tell us that we're in really great shape, we can see here that we have a pretty good microstructure, and this is generally something you do want to consider more so averaging into a long position versus taking a short. Mainly because we're consolidating nicely in this current range. Money flow index is higher than the RSI, and those are signs I try to look for in smaller timeframes. While we're a bit on the overextended side, if we do see a short-term correction to this 320 mark, I'm going to be interested in considering a long there just based on a short-term pump to that 340 resistance. Okay, it may even do that right now, but it really depends on Bitcoin. So with me feeling like Bitcoin's going to pull back a little bit before it legs up again, I think SUI is worth waiting a little bit before you take a long. But there's no doubt that there's still a decent amount of bearish activity here and things that aren't fully confirming. So you're probably better off waiting to take a trade on this coin. But if you were to consider a trade, make sure it's a tighter take profit targets and maybe higher leverage with a low amount of margin. Okay, that's kind of the concept there. As you increase your margin, you want to lower the leverage and the inverse as well. Okay, so that's kind of my thoughts on SUI. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Just before we take a look at the next altcoin, I want to recommend you consider trading with Bitunix. If you use my link to register down below or have in the past, you'll always be eligible for future trading competitions, but this one is awesome. It's probably the best one I've seen yet, with a full-on $16,000 individual prize pool, as well as a collective prize pool as well for the top 30 traders. Be sure to check out the link down below for more information. All right, let's take a look here at XRP, see where we're at. Back-end data for XRP, if I recall, is still that $2.90 to $3 range. Yep, 290 is that local area of resistance, which we can see worked fairly well for a take profit target. I think that was our second take profit target for our long. And we can see 302, 303 range is that open interest above. Now, liquidation delta has shifted bullish here. So we're at about 200 million in the green, and this coin averages somewhere in the between, 0 to 2 million in, 0 to 2 billion in liquidation delta. So we're still in the early stages of this push of the continuation higher. Now, based on liquidation, I'm leaning more towards the price action going further up because we can see a lot at $2.95, $3, and $3.05. So that's a good sign overall. But keep in mind, majority of the local liquidation has been fully swept. A lot of shorts at 285 to 290 got destroyed here recently. I don't know why you're shorting XRP on a weekend when everything is looking fairly well bullish, but that's a conversation for another day. Take a look here at the XRP chart, daily time frame, recognizing that we're good and not good. Let me explain. First of all, from a macro perspective, we haven't broken our larger time frame descending trend. Now, keep in mind, this descending trend line is not perfect. It didn't hit all the points exact. It never truly is. But the concept remains the same. It's moving consistent and concurrent with both our 20 and the 50-day SMA. That's generally why we see confluence when those two coins intersect, those two moving averages intersect. We're generally going to see a rejection at that area, not because it's a resistance, but mainly because it's the trend that hasn't been broken yet. And to break a trend, you generally need high volume. We don't have enough volume here. I mean, look at this volume. It's super, super low for XRP. So until that increases, I wouldn't expect any kind of surge or push to the upside. I'm sure some, XRP idiot out there is telling you to buy now because it's the last chance. But the concept here is that we've broken our short-term descending trend. Therefore, 290 to 303 is a higher probability. But maintaining above that level is a different story. We need to close above that $3 mark to feel bullish on this coin once more. Okay, so those are things I like to look for. We can see pretty much the same darn thing here on this macro structure for XRP. Only difference is we've seen a second stochastic swing to the upside. That's good because that implies we probably reached an area of overextension, which we did. We hit a 9 on TDS. We had way more selling pressure in the 270s to 280s than we needed to. If we look at the 4-hour time frame, we can also see the short-term descending trend line has been broken, of course. We're above the most relevant SMAs except for the 200-day. But what do you know? The 200-day SMA is moving concurrent with that descending trend. Keep in mind, the 200-day SMA on the 4-hour is approximately the same thing as a 50-day SMA on the daily, right? Almost the same amount of time frame being used for that moving average. So what I'm getting at here is that adds confluence to the 290 range being that resistance. When we look here though, these are very positive signs. Money flow index is above the RSI, which, keep in mind, somewhat of a false positive, mainly because we had this significant amount of volume that dropped off in our moving average, in our equation. In other words, the money flow index takes the last 14 candles. And as you can see here, we saw a significant uptrend in MFI. That's basically telling us here that this guy fell off. So the long story short there is I wouldn't trust the MFI being above the price because we're only seeing the moving averages or the average amount of money flowing into this coin based on the weekend data. Okay, so that's why Monday MFIs can be a little off. So just want to kind of put it out there so you know if you're using Market Cipher or some magical indicator that's supposed to work perfectly, that's a very false positive that screws a lot of people up. Okay, outside of that, 4-hour time frame is transitioning, just like most coins we talked about today. So the concept remains the same. Bitcoin likely to retrace and pull back. I think altcoins are going to do the same thing with it. I feel Bitcoin will maintain 111 to 113,000, and that range there is a good place to consider averaging into your favorite coins, whatever price point they're going to be at that time. Between now and then, though, most of these altcoins are overextended. We should probably wait to consider a long position, just based on the simple fact that what goes up must come down, right? Simple as that. So once things kind of calm down a little bit, we start to see the true outliers, which coins are outperforming versus Bitcoin. Those are the racehorses we want to invest in. Right now, almost everything's moving 1-to-1, and it's best to kind of wait for this storm to pass first, based on the fact that we have fundamental catalysts coming today, tomorrow, and likely Wednesday as well with the government shutdown. So all stuff we need to understand. to be better traders. Cool. I hope that made sense and I described it correctly. Thank you again so much for the wonderful support. I get a lot of compliments now too. I really appreciate people just being open and honest. Obviously, there's some people that don't compliment too, but they're generally just trolls that are, they're trading based on emotion. They're kind of upset with themselves, and it's understandable. But I just hope you'll continue to learn as much as you can. Keep hitting the like buttons, commenting below, enable alerts, and we'll look forward to seeing tomorrow's video. Thanks again so much. We'll see you again soon. Take care.